How are managers actually using generative AI in your experience?
Well, first of all, I thank you for this question because this is a question I'm often asked. We joined forces with our research institute at Capgemini, and with a survey across 1,500 managers, we found that less than 15% of managers globally in the second half of 2024 were using generative AI models on a daily basis. The common narrative is highly focused on using generative AI for productivity, for efficiency. In daily use of generative AI, we mapped 35 managerial tasks that sooner or later every manager globally will find themselves executing on them. And we recommend how to use generative AI and how to best interact with generative AI. We're seeing too often leaders who are spectators. So they observe others who are using the technology. They talk about the technology without having ever tried it. There's a risk of trusting too much of the technology. There's a risk of delegating too much to the technology. I do not deny that. And that's exactly why we wrote this book, Shedding Light on Co-Thinking.
Today we have a very special guest. Elisa Farri has come all the way from Italy. And why is she so important? Because she's one of the few people globally who understands artificial intelligence, more importantly, the impact it will have on managers. So Elisa is the Vice President and Head of Capgemini Invent's Management Lab and is at the forefront of research that is bridging academics with professionals who are trying to make AI work. Elisa, welcome to our podcast.
Thank you for having me. My pleasure.
For those of us who are new to you, of course, your book published by Harvard is a must read, but we would love to know about you as a person and, maybe your entire journey from where you started to what made you an expert. So maybe you can give us a synopsis of your formative years, what brought you to Harvard Business School's Europe Research Center, and finally to what you do at Capgemini.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I studied at Bocconi University in Milan. I graduated in economics, and I worked for the first couple of years as research assistant in Bocconi University. And then I moved to Paris, where I started working at the Europe Research Center of Harvard Business School. I was a research assistant and a case writer. Both experiences have really shaped not just my approach to work, but my mindset when I explore leadership and management and how it's changing over the years.
And tell me a little bit more about, of course, the case studies of Harvard are famous. So now we know who to blame for all those hours that people spend in trying to analyze those case studies. From there, what made you take the leap and join Capgemini? And tell us a little bit about the Invents Management Lab. What exactly does it do?
Okay, so let me first take a step back. So after almost a couple of years in Paris, I realized that what was missing in my background and in my experience was a first-hand, hands-on, let's say, experience with the real world, with the business world. And so I had this unique opportunity of meeting Alessandro Di Fiore, who was the president at that time of Harvard Business Review Italy, so the Italian edition of the magazine. And he was about to launch his new venture. And what intrigued me since our first conversation was that he wanted to create a small boutique consulting firm at the intersection of the real world, so businesses and academia. And so he asked me to join initially as part of the research center of his new venture. And then I gradually moved to the real consulting side of the business. And this was a really formative experience because for the very first time, I was bridging theories and lessons from the academia into real business issues, into real strategic imperatives that leaders and managers were facing every single day. And so I went from bridging these two words inwards when I was a case writer and a research assistant at Harvard Business School to bridging in practice thanks to this experience. Since 2022, I'm officially part of Capgemini Invent, where I lead the Management Lab. And the Management Lab builds on the legacy of ECSI Consulting and keeps nurturing this ongoing exchange between business on one side and academia on the other side. And the way in which we do it is by connecting needs, pressing issues, strategic imperatives with the latest ideas and the theories. At the same time, we are also originating our own ideas and theories because, as you can imagine, being at the intersection of these two worlds is so beneficial that also is an ongoing engine for our own thought leadership. So within Capgemini, we are both, let's say, producing and generating thought leadership, but also bridging the latest thought leadership into practice.
Wow. You must have done something really valuable for Capgemini to actually acquire that business. Give us a sense of one or two interesting projects which, in your opinion, bridges the intersection between academics, thought leadership, and real world. If you can give us a sense without, disclosing names, that would be really useful.
Sure. There's one case in point, in my opinion. Almost 5 to 6 years ago, we joined forces with Professor Gary Pisano at Harvard Business School. By the way, Professor Pisano is the professor with whom I co-authored my first case study at Harvard Business School. So he is a mentor, is really a role model for me. And so 5 to 6 years ago, he published in the Harvard Business Review magazine a seminal article which was called The Hard Truth of Innovative Cultures. And this article shed light on the fact that innovative cultures, truly innovative cultures, are characterized by paradoxes. The article was explaining, let me say, at a theoretical level, although it was not that complex, but at a theoretical level, the inherent complexities of innovative cultures. And it mirrored so many issues we have been observing and discussing with leaders in the business world. And so our team, together with Professor Pisano, developed an approach that could help leaders, first of all, understand the status of their innovative culture, but most importantly, help them evolve and improve on this. In more practical terms, what we did, we designed a survey together with Professor Pisano, which we ran across thousands and thousands of executives in various organizations. We created a baseline. And then for each organization, we helped them understand how they were performing against the benchmark. And we focused especially on the leadership behaviors. And here comes, I think, the novelty of this framework. because we all know that our leaders, the ones who are shaping culture every single day in how they lead and manage their teams. And so this is a very concrete example of how you can take a powerful article, a powerful academic paper, and translate it into tools that can be used in the business world and help make informed decisions about how to thrive, how to improve on a specific topic. Now, Professor Pisano is no longer in Harvard Business School. He transitioned to the real world as well. But we keep using this framework and this approach because especially today, with new technologies that are disrupting, the way of work, we need more and more organizations who are embracing an innovative culture. And so this is extremely powerful. It's very pragmatic, very concrete. It took us 1 year for developing these tools, for testing and experimenting them. When I think about a case, a project, I think that this illustrates perfectly. And in Rotman Management magazine, we published a couple of examples of this framework in action and how it really helped some companies.
And is it actually being used by Deloitte or by other organizations, the framework that you developed? To what extent has it been used?
No, it's proprietary. So we are using it as Capgemini with our clients.
Oh, okay. And this whole idea of paradoxes, it is a little bit paradoxical to understand it because organizations want a lot of alignment. Help me understand what is a behavior which is in a culture context paradoxical. Is it like collaboration as against fast decision making because both seem to have some paradoxes within them? Or, how do you illustrate paradoxes in the culture?
So let's take failure. Okay, failure is an important concept when we discuss about innovation. Okay, so it's entrenched into innovation. Especially when failure allows you to learn. Okay, so it's an intelligent failure, I would say. And so on the one hand, what we see happening is that leaders talk about failure. They want to nurture a culture that does not stigmatize failure, and so embraces failure as a way of learning. But then, as Professor Pisano puts it in the article, this is just one side of the story. So it's so easy to talk about the bright side of failure. We should also talk about the not so pleasant side of failure. So when failure happens, because there is incompetence inside the organization. And so when we look at highly innovative cultures, leaders and managers at all levels, they balance tolerance for failure with zero tolerance for incompetence. And this is an example of the paradox in action.
Wow. And I think that makes the job of the leader very difficult.
Absolutely.
Trying to figure out which one is an honest mistake, which is going to contribute to innovation, and which one is just sheer incompetence, which cannot be allowed to continue. In context of real life application, of course, the biggest sort of tsunami of that's happening right now is generative AI, and how generative AI is no longer in the realm of science, and it has impacted people, impacted jobs. Yeah. How did that research start for you, and when did you become interested in generative AI and what it does to people?
Sure. So, as I said, I joined Capgemini in 2022, and later that year, OpenAI launched the ChatGPT. So, as you can imagine, being the management lab, so focused on management, leadership, innovation, strategy, it was a sort of a natural evolution of our research field to explore how ChatGPT in the early days and later all the other models were having or not an impact on management. I remember in 2023 discussing with former clients, so friends, people we worked with in the previous years, and with whom we had a trusted relationship. And so we started exploring, informally, whether or not they were using ChatGPT back then. And then at the same time, I was nurturing also conversation in academia with former colleagues, but also professors, leading authorities, asking, whether or not they were exploring the potential of ChatGPT. And to be very, very honest, the people were highly skeptical in beginning of 2023. The most recurrent quote was, "Oh, Elisa, this is not for me. This is not for us." Then later that year, I would say after the summer, things started to change. And personally, what I experienced was that for the first time in 15 years, academia was changing the pace faster than the business world. So what happened was that professors and former colleagues with whom I talked in the spring and early summer were coming back to me, calling me and saying, "Elisa, we need to find ways, to start experimenting with this ChatGPT. Okay, so what are your ideas? What can we do with students?" So they were very proactive in reaching out. And this surprised me, because it was a really leap forward for them in a humble way to say, okay, what can we do? So based on your ongoing research experiments, what can we do? The reaction from the business world was a bit slower. That's at least what I experimented firsthand. So in early 2024, managers and executives, started asking, should we use it? How others are using it, and so on and so forth. In parallel, while we were capturing all these inputs, we were conducting experiments and we mapped with a massive desk research effort all the leaders and managers who were actively and proactively sharing through interviews, social media, their personal use of generative AI. So we came up, together with my co-author Gabriele Rosani, with a long list of names of people who were really disrupting the way in which they were working on a daily basis. And so we said, okay, there's a movement here. It was at that point in time that we realized that this was getting bigger, although at a slow pace, but it was getting bigger and a sort of a disruptive force for leaders and managers globally. We asked and we joined forces with our research institute at Capgemini, and with a survey across 1,500 managers, we found that less than 15% of managers globally in the second half of 2024 were using generative AI models on a daily basis. Compared to the vast majority, almost 98%, clearly stating that they saw benefits and potential in using it. So this shed light on what we call the ambition-action gap. That's, let's say, the reason why we wrote the book. The book is a practical guide, concrete, with full of prompts, easy to use, and aims at accompanying every manager, notwithstanding the sectors, the function, the industry, the size of the organization, in daily use of generative AI. We mapped 35 managerial tasks that sooner or later every manager globally will find themselves executing on them. And we recommend how to use generative AI and how to best interact with generative AI.
For the benefit of our viewers, tell us a little bit more about what went into the book and how did you sort of plan the content of the book, because even while you were writing the book, the world was changing. So, who was your target audience, and what did you want to include in the book, and what has been the response to your book?
So, yeah, the challenge indeed was that while we were writing, we were experimenting and researching and learning along the way. So I remember, spending more time in testing prompts across all the available models back then, together with my co-author, rather than on pure writing, to be honest. We wanted the book to be, first of all, tech agnostic. Our concern, as you can imagine, was obsolescence. And so we didn't want to anchor the book to a specific model. And so we were testing across the most popular models, including also some smaller models that were in their early days, like Mistral, because we didn't know back then, what would have been the adoption, what would have been the choice of leaders in the selection of the specific model to use inside the organization. And so, yeah, a lot of time spent on testing prompts, improving prompts, although the goal has never been to get to the perfect prompt. And this should never be the goal, in my opinion. We just wanted to have prompts that worked, first of all, but also that can provide a springboard for managers to have some first-hand experience with these models, to overcome what I call the blank prompt syndrome. Because what is happening, especially when we deliver our masterclasses to executives, is that they find themselves freezing, in front of the screen, feeling a bit lost. What can I ask? What should I ask? What should I prompt the machine with? And so that's why we wanted to have as many prompts as possible inside the book, tailored and customized to the specific managerial tasks. And this is, in my opinion, what is making the book so successful. Leaders and managers, they're sharing with me and Gabriele the feedback that they find it so practical, so useful. They just have a look at the index, the table of content, they jump on the task that they are either most curious about or they are most interested in. They get to the page, they copy and paste the prompt, they start experimenting, and again, as a springboard, then they iteratively improve and adjust to their needs. So this has been the writing journey. But as I said, it was a hybrid writing and experimental journey of building such a practical guide. And what we discussed in the first weeks with the senior editor at our business school, at our business review, was, who are we writing for? Initially, the idea was to write for executives, but then we felt that, it was probably too limited. And so that's why we decided to write for every manager. We wanted this to be inclusive, as much inclusive as possible. And so sometimes when I talk to top executives, it could be that the reaction is, oh, but this is a guide for managers. And then I invite them, have a look at the book. And then you tell me if this is for your managers or if it can bring value to you as well. And most often, they come back and they say, absolutely, there are so many things that can help me in my daily work.
And for those who are wondering, this is a bestseller, Elisa Farri's book, HBR Guide to Generative AI for Managers. Is that the name of the book?
Yes,
and
it's
is it
correct.
available in India?
Absolutely, yes. And it's not just my book, but it was written with Gabriele Rosani, my wonderful co-author.
And highly recommended in case you haven't read it. But my fear is it going to make managers stop thinking and being completely dependent on your book? Because for 35 activities that a manager has to do, all they need to do is to go to your book and look at the relevant page and give a prompt. How are managers actually using generative AI in your experience?
Well, first of all, I thank you for this question, because this is a question I'm often asked, and this question reflects the common narrative around the use of generative AI. So let me elaborate on this. The common narrative is highly focused on using generative AI for productivity, for efficiency. And this triggers a mindset and an approach where you look at this technology as a tool, you ask the bot to execute for you, you enter in a sort of prompt and wait mindset, and this typically and hopefully helps you, work faster and gain in terms of productivity. This is the common narrative. What we found in our research and talking to pioneers is that when it comes to managerial tasks, in particular, it's not only about productivity. And I would say that productivity plays a very limited role. It's much more about deeper reflection, thinking augmentation. It's about taking different perspectives, looking at problems from different point of views. And so the book sheds light on this other mode of interaction with generative AI, what we call the co-thinking with AI. So on the one hand, you can interact as if you would do with an assistant or as a thought partner. So the duality is more, let's say, on the human side, because the technology can do both for you. The technology can help you, in executing things. It can have a dialogue with you. But here, the book is all about the human capability that managers need to develop. So today we are at the dawn of a new human-AI collaboration capability. And we need managers to equip themselves with this capability. They need to be able to understand when it makes sense to shift from one mode to the other, how to eventually use them in a sequence, because we know that tasks do not happen in a vacuum. They are part of workflows. And with all the new technological advancements, let's think about agents. We need more and more managers who are familiar, who are knowledgeable about how this technology works and how it can add value. So 50% of the book is about how to use generative AI for productivity, and 50% is about thinking. So going back to your point, our view is that leaders will augment their thinking thanks to AI, if and only if they start talking with AI. So they stop talking about AI, they start talking with AI.
2 years back, a professor in Stanford sent me a prompt which essentially was seeking to use generative AI as a coach. And it was a fairly elaborate and long prompt. I'm still continuing that conversation with one of the generative AI models because I find it very useful. Is there a danger that it's finally going to replace a whole lot of people And we already know, thanks to technology, jobs are not increasing. For every $1 million increase in revenue, we are producing less and less jobs. What's the end game of generative AI, or is it too much of a science fiction for you to speculate on?
Well, this is indeed a concern. But I think that the problem, once again, is not on the technological side. It's more on the human side. My view is that we need to equip humans with the capabilities and the mindset they need in order to extract value from the technology. Too often, in the common narrative, we forget about the human element. In the formula, the human element tends to be missing. It's all about technology. And so we need, and we have the responsibility, in my opinion, to rebalance the narrative and make sure that each ingredient is central in the formula. There's a risk of trusting too much of the technology. There's a risk of delegating too much to the technology. I do not deny that. And that's exactly why we wrote this book, Shedding Light on Co-thinking. Co-thinking, it's all about having a dialogue, having a conversation, like the conversation that we're having right now, okay? So during a conversation, what happens? Your judgment sensors are all switched on. You're listening to me, you challenge in your head what you're listening, you try to connect the dots, you're thinking about the next question you're going to ask me, and at the same time, when I answer to you, I switch on my critical thinking just to make sure that what I'm conveying in terms of message makes sense, relates to the audience, and so on and so forth. So that's why if we have more and more humans inside the organization switching from a prompt and wait to a co-thinking mode, we are, let's say, providing a sort of an antidote. It's not the solution, but it's one of the antidotes to blindly trust the technology. And why I'm saying this? Because let's think about the last time you used a calculator. You typed, probably it was 2 plus 2, okay? And you blindly trusted the result. You didn't switch on your judgment sensor, okay? That's what we want to avoid when it comes to generative AI. We want our people inside the organization to always have their judgment sensors on.
And I must tell you, this is a paradox. We started by talking about a paradox. Almost 7 out of 10 people who come for an interview, let us say a sales interview, and we have this old world process where we say, please write a letter to a potential customer recommending why they should use our product. Mm-hmm. And then there is an app which is called the AI calculator or something like that. And the app tells you that 70%, 80%, 90%, sometimes 100% is generated by AI. And that defeats the whole purpose of asking the candidate to write something by applying his or her mind. And AI is also going to learn how to be human. For example, there is something which is commonly referred to as hallucination or mistakes that AI produces. When you confront AI by saying, hello, that's a mistake, Elisa Farri is in Capgemini, she is not in KPMG or whatever you want to say. Increasingly, AI is reacting by saying, oh, I'm sorry, I missed that. Would you like me to try again? It is pretending to be human, including having the same frailties that humans have. So this is really interesting and I think somewhat frightening.
Yeah.
What's your advice to a manager who, at least during his or her professional life, would like to make sure that he is on top of AI and does not become a victim of AI?
Okay, so being on top of AI, I think it's a kind of a challenge, but at least being knowledgeable and
Yes.
familiar with AI, I would say. We need managers who deep a toe, who get their hands dirty with this technology. We're seeing too often leaders who are spectators. So they observe others who are using the technology. They talk about the technology without having ever tried it. So in a future of work where we expect the majority of tasks to be performed at the intersection of human and technology, we need leaders who are aware of how this can unfold. So this is imperative, in my opinion. And when we look at organizations who are pretty advanced and they are truly accelerating AI adoption, you will see that the leadership from top to the middle management layer is really walking the talk. They are not simply talking about AI, they use AI on a daily basis, they share internally, they even teach to their teams how to use generative AI. There are executives who record short video pills, sharing their personal use of AI. There are other executives who share by email, some of their experiments, what they're learning, the potential risks that they are encountering. Other leaders create space and time to debate and discuss about the use of this technology. And why all of this? Because they need to create what Professor Amy Edmondson would say, the psychological safety needed inside the organization to experiment with a technology that, as I said before, is not the calculator. So it's a probabilistic model. You need to switch on your judgment. You need to be aware of the risks and what we call the traps. There are so many traps. If you do not use it, you're clueless about the benefits, but even more importantly, you're clueless about the traps and the risks. And so I think that it's really a duty and a responsibility for every manager and leader to use this technology and activate an active communication channel with their teams. There's one question I ask when I talk to executives, and is the following. When was the last time you asked anybody in your team, have you used Gemini, the specific model? What did you do? Probably a couple of people raised their hand in the room. And why is it so worrying? If you do not ask, then people might think that this is not an expectation. They might think that you're not interested in them using AI. And let's be honest, this is a technology that raises some psychological barriers. Most people do not feel comfortable in using something that they know can hallucinate, that they need to activate the judgment, they need to validate. Other people inside the organization, they tell me, sometimes I feel like probably I do not add value if I use AI. Or if I'm using AI, I'm showing that I'm not intelligent enough. So you see, we need leaders who activate this communication channel, who listen also to the concerns, to the worries of their own teams, and guide them in the use of this new technology.
And there are ethical concerns. For example,
Absolutely.
privacy and, or uploading official documents so that the AI can produce a presentation. Now, all of these things organizations have to think through.
Absolutely.
I know of organizations who do not allow AI to be used in any of the official platforms, and people surreptitiously use it on their phones, on their mobile phones, because they want to be more productive. And that brings me to my last question for today, Elisa. And please build on this if there is something else that you would like to talk but we haven't broached about. What's next for you as a researcher, as a management consultant? How do you see yourself growing in the next 3 to 5 years? What would you like to focus on?
So we're just started a new research initiative And what we are doing right now, we're moving from a focus on individual tasks to, let's say, a broader focus on workflows, on really how work is performed inside the organization. So what is really fascinating, and we will be exploring in the next couple of years, is how AI, and in particular generative AI models, can be a driving force for doing work differently inside the organization, and not just, let's say, discrete atomic tasks, but as a force of reinvention of the way of working inside the organizations.
Wow. So in a sense, AI will be used to break down silos and ensure that the workflows gets done more seamlessly.
Yeah, augmented thanks to the technology, and with all the new technologies, emerging. I mentioned before agents, but let's think about technological convergence. We will see more and more technologies converging, which will lead to physical AI, spatial AI. So probably in the future, we will not be interacting with our laptop. We will be interacting directly with objects and machines, really performing tasks together with us. And so if this is the future, we need to accompany leaders in how they can not just do single task differently, but how they can rethink the entire way of working and the workflows of their people inside the organization to prepare them for an augmented workforce in the future.
Congratulations to you and your organization for thinking through all of this and giving us valuable ideas on what we can do. I must confess that I spent a lot of time thinking up all of these questions myself. Maybe I should have used the AI as a partner in developing this particular questionnaire. So next time we meet, we will have a more augmented conversation with AI as well.
Look forward to it.
Elisa.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you for having me.